I still don't know what that is, honestly. What's up, everybody? We're live. It is another on psilocybin. Tristan and I are talking about just a little bit about that onset anxiety, the the barrier that prevents us from taking mushrooms more. It's something that I come up against regularly, even after we did that subtle sacrament down there. Uh, we got Seth hollering already. What's up, Seth? All right. We got a couple. Yeah, I think we're gonna start getting some traction here, Tristan. So let's talk about this a little bit more before we have people hopping in. What is it that stops us from taking mushrooms more often? What do you got for me, Tristan?
No, I mean, I think that it's kind of like this is so much different. I have no kids, but when people are like, "Man, I'll have kids when it's the right time," and then you really come to find that, like, there is no
Never a right
correct or right time,
Yeah.
and whatever time is the right time. I think that they're like, "Well, I don't know which side of the dice I'm gonna get," or um, I'll wait until I have a couple more hours like set aside.
I think if that's for me, it's like I feel like
Distraction.
I'm trying to like today I came home and thought about taking a half a gram, and then there's just all the kids around and was like, I just can't deal with it. And then by the time the kids go to bed, it's 9 o'clock, and I've usually only got like another hour in me. Um, but it is weird how we're so ready to drink a beer or have a margarita or smoke a joint, and maybe it's the duration, maybe it's the 4 to 6 hour kind of commitment. I think
Mhm.
that's got a part to play in it for me as well. um, but I don't know, and every time I come out of a mushroom trip, I'm like, damn, I need to do that more. So Seth, it is possible. It's all possible. Not only is it possible, it's likely if we maintain focus, right? Whatever it
Mhm.
is, we can imagine it, we can have it, we can achieve it. This life is such a beautiful mystery, and that is one of the things that the mushrooms have revealed to me over and over and over is that I get to create my reality. Tristan, go ahead and post that link in there for us. We got four people already hopping on talking. Dosing is key. Anybody wants to come in and get part of this conversation, please hit that link. You can hop in here. Jim Mandus, I'd love to hear what you've got to say about dosing. I agree. Dosing is a very important topic. I'd love to talk about some of that, maybe some of your experience, hear how you're working with the medicine. You can definitely Baba, Baba Booey's back up in here. How fast do y'all eat your dried shrimmers? As fast as I can choke them down. Seriously though, I don't waste time. I just want to go into it, get it over with, get down in there, and get going. If you eat them over the course of 30 minutes, your onset is going to be extended. I want to get it as soon as possible and just launch personally.
Oh, and you talked about like grazing. How like your I mean, with the fresh mushrooms versus dry mushrooms, we've talked about that a couple of times. When you have a little bit more rocket fuel, um, in the beginning, and you don't have to wait on it to all be metabolized.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love to eat them fresh. Love to get on my hands and knees and eat them off the ground when I can. We got a lot of rain coming down here in Kentucky. I hope to see some ovoids popping soon. I've been checking out some of the patches and can see the mycelium coming to the surface. It's getting ready to happen, y'all. Come on, Jim Mandus, let's hear from you. Let's hop in here. Click that link, Jim. All you got to do is hit that link. We can let you in. I'd love to hear what you got to say about dosing. Um, Gaetano. I'm not sure what that link is that you just shared, but if you'd like to hop in and be a part of our conversation, please do. We just want to hear what you got to say. Any questions, thoughts, insights, whatever you can share with us and our audience is going to be valuable. We keep having better and better conversations all the time. My kids are trying to break down the door. I'm telling you, That's the
I'm
thing.
going to LinkedIn for Jim.
Okay, yeah, Jim. He's going to drop the link over there on LinkedIn. I thought you could see it in the chat here, Jim. My bad. Not sure what you're seeing over there on LinkedIn. Hold on, I'm going to mute my mic and scream at a kid real quick. I'll be right back.
And this is what it's like, I guess, having a home studio.
Yeah, welcome to working from home. Wow, we got Carolyn. Is this the Carolyn that I know, that we know and love? Carolyn, are you there?
Yes, sorry. Hi, I didn't realize my mic was off. Yes, hello. I didn't actually mean to join the stream. I've just never seen this platform before. I'm just here. I thought I was just going to be joining the chat.
No problem. No problem.
But yes, hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
That is Carolyn, everybody. Carolyn is writing for the Leo. She's doing a sizable story, cover story on Sanctuary for the Earth Day issue of the Leo. I am super stoked about that. She has been coming into a lot of our Sanctuary meetings, went on a subtle sacrament with us last weekend. She's been really a very curious and insightful journalist, which is always very helpful.
All right, I've sent Jim the link.
Okay, cool, Jim. Hopefully you'll get to see that. In terms, Bubba Booey, you're asking about how fast do we eat our dried mushrooms. One of the things I want to kind of just briefly mention here is you've got, multiple ways of ingesting. Obviously, you can eat fresh mushrooms. That's going to be your fastest onset because you're going to get psilocin immediately. And then psilocybin is going to kick in about 20 minutes to 30 minutes afterwards. If you eat dried mushrooms, the majority of what you're getting is psilocybin that has to break down into psilocin and then uptaken into the body. Then, people do teas. Teas is a little bit faster of an onset just because it's easier digested. Also carriers, like chocolates, those can be helpful. Chocolate also is a mild monoamine oxidase inhibitor, so it can, dark chocolate, cacao, can potentiate the experience a little bit. And then there's the capsules. The capsules are becoming kind of popular. This is something that we did in Jamaica a lot to standardize dosing. But one of the things about the capsules, there's two good things. There's a good thing about it and not so good thing about it. The good thing is that you can get down big doses without having to chew up a ton of mushrooms, but you don't get to chew up a bunch of mushrooms. That's a good thing, can be. And then the onset can be quite a bit extended because you got the capsule breakdown and you got the psilocybin breakdown. So it can be a good 45 minutes to an hour onset with the capsules. There is also, when you chew the whole dried mushrooms, you're getting in some sublingually, so it's going to uptake faster that way as well. There is my friend Omar Thomas down at the Diaspora Psychedelic Society in Jamaica was working with Mexican shamans for a while, and he said that their belief is that when you chew the whole mushrooms, that the medicine goes to your heart faster. And I think that there's probably some, it's physiological or it's just the absorption rate through the mouth, but don't know. We got BW asking, how intense is the trip as compared to LSD? Well, that depends on dosing, right? I'd love to get you in here, Jim, if we can get you talking, but you brought up in early on that dosing is key, and it has such a big role to play in the nature of the experience. Everybody's different. Everybody's got a different sensitivity. On average, though, I find that 3 grams and below is a pretty mild dose for the most part. You get into 3 to 6 gram range, you start to increase the possibility of things like ego death or possibly even blackout, maybe feeling like you're going a little crazy, or getting into that really mystical, ineffable space that oftentimes we're going for. You get into 6 to 10 grams, then it's like end of the world scenario kind of thing. Like you may find yourself digging your face into the carpet for multiple hours. It can definitely lead to some blackout or some, challenging experiences. That being said, any level of dosing can provide a challenging experience, which is why it is really valuable to have someone with you or nearby that is experienced. It's I think it's a tricky thing to dose by yourself. I have worked with a lot of people, and I've warned each and every group that I work with. I'll, say that doing 5 to 7 grams in a group is a very different ball game than doing 5 to 7 grams by yourself. And most of the time, people have heeded that warning, but occasionally they haven't. And I have had clients, people that I've worked with, who went back home, did a 7-gram dose, and ended up in their underwear in the street causing a traffic jam. So you don't want that to be you, right? It's like anything, moderation, knowing your limits, easing into this, because it can get into some really, really wonky spaces without a doubt. If you go back and listen to that conversation we had last week, talked about an experience that I had where certain I was bleeding internally, and it was crazy. Go back and check out that one. That was a wild one. One of my favorite ones to reflect on. I told this story to Tristan when we were on retreat last. I had years and years ago, I was up in Indiana and I did a 6-gram dose by myself. Well, my ex-wife was there, and she didn't really like when I ate mushrooms because I got weird. And so I took this 6-gram dose. It was getting scary. It was getting hectic. I thought shit was going south. I thought I was dying. I actually was in my kitchen kind of like, I'm dying. I'm dying. I'm dying. I think I'm dying. And she was just like, what the fuck do you keep doing to yourself? I'm going to bed. And so she went to bed. I had heard before that if you drank milk, it would help you bring your trip down. So I was just like chugging, just like had a gallon of milk, just chugging this gallon of milk, trying to bring my trip down. That wasn't helping. And I'm in the kitchen. I'm just jumping up and down. Holy fuck, I'm dying. I'm dying. I'm dying. And as I'm going through this death scenario, of all times for this to happen, in the closet next to me was an old Dora the Explorer training potty. And as I'm doing this, I'm going through this whole I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying, Dora the Explorer goes, all done, all done, all done. And I was just like, what the fuck is happening? It was so crazy. And I think even though my wife was not a fan of what I was doing, having her there was helpful because she had seen me go through multiple dying experiences and come out of it on the other side. So I don't think it was too unfortunate, Carolyn. I think it was actually all good because when I came out of it, I mean, it from there, it just went to a whole nother world. I ended up outside. This was like, I don't know, January or February. I ended up outside just like pacing in circles, talking to the mushrooms. It was this night in particular was amazing because I understood very deeply, very, very deeply that I was eating the mushrooms and that they were becoming a part of me, that we are what we eat in a very literal sense. And so it eventually helped me understand how deep my relationship was with these mushrooms. And I don't know, even some of the patches, the wild patches. And I know this sounds flaky to people out there, but I experienced it as real. There's been 3 times with lion's mane that I have heard them call to me, tell me where to go, and I go there and they are there. That's happened twice with ovoids. many times with my own cubensis that I was growing. And even like this night in particular, I had my grow rooms down there and I had my chanterelle patches out in the woods, and I could just hear them, like there was like a buzz, like a vibration. So it's something that we don't understand. Although I hope people saw this. If you can find it, Tristan, post the link. There is a scientist who is now starting to illustrate that mushrooms communicate with up to a 50 word lexicon. They are using electrical impulses, and the scientists have deciphered at this point 50 different signals that are communicative. It's pretty amazing. So the mushrooms actually are talking. And if you know how to listen, you can hear them. Follow Dora the Explorer all the way down. Whew, man, that was a heck of a night. Who we got here? Somebody hop in this conversation with us. I want to hear Jim talking about dosing. I know it's a little it's a little weird maybe, or people might be a little bit afraid to get in and have their names posted and be public. And if that's the case, I get it. I understand. You can feel free to comment in the chat or whatever. But this is really about you all coming in and sharing your experiences and kind of bouncing ideas and experiences off of each other. I can sit here and tell stories all night long about mushroom trips that I've had, but I don't know how valuable that would be.
No, I mean, what was your first time dosing? What was your first dose? And then when did you decide to take it? Well, I guess what's your first dose, and we can go from there.
I don't even know what the first dose was. I took LSD when I was like 19 and was absolutely in love. And my buddies that gave me the LSD were like, oh, well, if you like LSD, you're going to love mushrooms. I was like, oh, yeah. So we got some mushrooms. Finally, dude came through with a bag of mushrooms. And I probably had like a quarter bag that I bought for myself. And just munched on a few and kind of letting it see where it goes. And, sometimes your stomach gets a little churny there at the onset. And so went down the bathroom and sat on the throne. And as I was sitting there, I was kind of there staring off into space. And the shadow from the toilet paper holder went whoop up the wall. And I was like, oh, yeah. And I heard my friends from the living room going, oh, he's getting it. He's getting it. And as soon as that hit, as soon as I felt that kind of warmth and that welcoming, I don't know if you felt that. I know a lot of people talk about the mushroom experiences being like going home, and that is entirely what I felt like. I felt like, oh, I'm going back home. That's where I'm going. And it ended up being, I had a little clay sculpture that I had made of a little tree stump with a face, and I ended up painting it that night. I don't have any of my paintings here, and that night changed the direction of my artwork from that day forward. It caused a massive shift in my style, and it has stuck with me ever since then. And so I then ate mushrooms 3 days straight after that. And on day 4, I woke up sick and was like, oh yeah, okay, maybe this is not how you do this. So I gave him a little bit of a break, but not for long, because it was really just like, it was home. And again, that's where I come up with this whole question of, why do I not take mushrooms more? Why do I not engage with the sacrament more?
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. When did you decide to actually go into like higher doses by yourself, going back to Jim's original point, dosing?
Yeah, that was actually when I moved to my farm in Indiana in 2009. I kind of messed around with like probably no more than 4 grams for a long time. And then I started listening to Terrence McKenna and was just like, oh, there's more here than I really suspect. And even then, we were having some very profound experiences. There was this one time I used to dose with this buddy of mine that I would, he was a musician, and we'd take mushrooms that I grew. And we had this one where we were in my garage and went for a walk. And as we're walking, we're walking down the street, and I just felt this like chill come over me. And I said to him, dude, it's 3:00, like a.m. And as soon as I said that, the church bell went bong, bong, bong. And it was 3, and I was like, oh, fuck. We got to hide. I don't know where it was about, what it was about. But we ended up underneath of a bush in someone's front yard for like an hour, just waiting for the hour of 3:00 to pass. But like that was very interesting because I had never experienced any. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but that was my first memorable experience of what I could call in some way precognition, right? And that's something that's not talked about within the psychedelic world that is relevant. Did you see that video that I posted in the Discord one day about the beyond something? Let me see if I can find it real quick. I think it's called One Step Beyond or something like that. There is a 1950s show that was kind of like Mysteries of the Unknown, kind of like X-Files thing. Yeah, here it is. One Step Beyond the Sacred Mushroom. You guys can YouTube this if you want, Tristan. You can find the link there. You can just YouTube search One Step Beyond the Sacred Mushroom. And this is an instance where they go into Mesoamerica and find these magic mushrooms, and they videotape the shaman doing these clairvoyant readings of people's health, of locating a lost or a stolen donkey, and something else. There's 3 things I think that they this shaman illustrated that showed their ability to see from a distance or to read people's health. Mm-hmm. And so they brought the mushrooms back, and they do ESP tests on the show host. Like, he eats mushrooms on camera. This is before they're illegal. He eats mushrooms on camera, and then they do these ESP tests. Like one guy is holding a card, with a shape on it, and the guy who ate the mushrooms is trying to guess what the shape is. And they do before he eats mushrooms and after he eats mushrooms, and his results after he eats mushrooms are crazy. It's awesome. This guy, who's obviously a very straight-edged TV show host, after he takes the mushrooms, they give him some cards, and they're turned upside down with pictures on them. And he's like, oh, I feel rushing and energy, and power, and movement. And they flip it over, and it's a waterfall. And he's like, oh, and then he'll do another one. And he's like, I feel warmth and compassion and kindness, nurturing. And they'll turn it over, and it's a woman holding a baby. And he's like, oh, you can tell that he's obviously dumbfounded by it. So,
well, I mean, go ahead. That is something that, because I know for people out there, like even me hearing this, it's one of those things where it's like, for some reason, it was very easy for me to hear as a child, like, you take the staff, you hit the staff, see just parts, we walk through this thing. All right. Mm-hmm. That was like, okay, fact. But then whenever you truly hear about these, like, the universal knowledge that exists, that's referenced by obviously the people that you're referring to, shaman, but I mean, even when you go to like Albert Hoffman, like he's talking about in the first experience with LSD, he's having these great scientists and great thinkers. Like, yeah, they're probably doing something a little chaotic with him, like because he talks about like they're chasing him around his house.
Einstein's chasing with a butcher knife, yeah.
But he's tapping. But there's essences even in that of the hinting of this universal sacred knowledge. I mean, Chinese healing, like the vessel can heal itself. It's a self-regulatory. There's like, I don't know if those two things click.
Albert Hoffman, who was a straight-laced scientist, after he kind of brought LSD 25 back out of storage, he said that one day he was working with the LSD, not 25, but working with another version of LSD, trying to, I think it was solve migraines or menstrual cramps. I forget what it was. There was something. And he said that he felt like LSD 25 in particular, this one iteration of the molecule, was calling to him. It had been in storage for like 20 years, and he felt like it was calling to him. And so he went, pulled it out, synthesized it, accidentally ingested it, and then purposefully ingested it. And now we have LSD, which is, the serotonin molecule. This is not just a happy molecule. This is a consciousness molecule. This is a communication molecule. So there's so much that we don't know. I'm going to jump to some of these questions, though. Carolyn's asking about Tim Leary. Tim Leary, I was such a downer on Tim Leary for so long. I felt like he single-handedly destroyed the psychedelic revolution of the 60s until I watched the documentary Dying to Know, where Tim Leary and Ram Dass, who used to be Richard Alpert, they were together at Harvard. They met back up as Tim Leary was dying and just kind of walked back through their lives together. And it was actually a really beautiful story. And looking at the life that Tim Leary led, I gained a deeper respect for him as someone who really authentically was pushing for true liberation. He wanted everyone to have their own sovereignty, to be able to use these plants, these chemicals that are so safe and so good for us in whatever way they wanted to. And, he kind of comes across as a party figure. But when Tim Leary first took psilocybin, he didn't speak for something like 4 days, maybe longer. He just shut up because he was in such awe of the experience and was trying to figure out how he could articulate his experience and what to do next with this. The man was absolutely a genius. There's no two ways about it. He was a genius. And I think that what he found, that joy that he found, that he tried to share with others, is the end goal for all of us. We come to these experiences many times for processing of trauma or relief from suffering of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And what's actually, in large part, what is happening is we're peeling off all that crap that prevents us from really being ourselves, from being our true selves. And our true selves are joyful. Our true selves are celebratory. Our true selves embrace the miracles and the mystery that's all around us. We are little children at heart, and it's the world that convinces us that we're not. So I think Leary just saw through the game and was like, it's just a game and we're going to have fun with this.
Mm-hmm.
I was so impressed by his quote in the movie. They asked him, Dying to Know, I highly encourage y'all to watch it to get a different perspective on Leary. But they asked him if he could do it over again, what would he do differently? And Tim Leary said if he could do it all over again, he would have more sex and take more psychedelics. So if Tim Leary is saying that, again, we're coming back to this question: why don't I engage with the mushroom more? Why don't I take mushrooms more regularly? I want to check in here on what Guy has to say. Guy said, I had a journey the other night with a friend, and we were both in deep. When we came out of it, we discussed our experience and found that we were experiencing the same messages and insights. While I was in deep, I thought at one point that I was in his experience and he had shared his intention beforehand, and the mushrooms were showing me things related to what he was learning. Can't explain it. Have you ever had a parallel experience with someone else when in the mushroom consciousness? Absolutely. Absolutely. We talked a little bit about this last week, an experience. My first experience with what I would call telepathy, where there was no two ways about it that we were communicating non-verbally. I could hear his words, he could hear mine, and later we talked about the whole thing and it all lined up. Beyond that, Courtney and I have had some very interesting experiences together. Years ago, we had one where it was a little bit scary, but kind of like at this like kind of terrifying figure entered into my field, and then she had the same thing come into her experience just moments later. In Jamaica, were just countless times, and you know, there was one time that I can speak to that's maybe similar, where a surgeon, this guy was a medical surgeon, came down and we were working together, and I had dosed with alongside of him, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just being directed. When I go into these experiences, I just basically say, just use me as a vessel of healing if I can be in any way. Just make use of me. And I sat by this guy for a while, and I had some internal stuff going on in myself and his experience. But always really trying to hold that boundary of privacy. I am not trying to get into anyone's head per se, but if I can assist in kind of moving some things through, then I am happy to be of service. And at the end of it, he came out of it and said, or he looked up at me and said that he's like, "What do you know what you were doing?" And I was like, I'm just doing what I'm instructed to do. And he said something like, you just extracted all of my guilt and shame. Like, you just performed a psychic surgery on me. And like, I acknowledged that was true. So there are some amazing things that can happen in this space that we don't have a lot of explanation for. I don't know if Carolyn's trying to come in. I'm going to just to see. Carolyn, were you trying to hop in the conversation?
I think maybe her connection.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So go ahead, Tristan.
Also, even just to kind of like tie those two things together, Alan Watts spoke specifically of Timothy Leary in a way where, it was kind of the essence of great idea, but, he did get to the point in the latter ends of, before the drug war won, to where, he just came out and he was like pushing it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, in a way, for Timothy Leary and for him to be working with soon to be Ram Dass, and for them to learn what they have learned before psychedelics and then to incorporate that with their, they were getting an accelerated PhD in psychedelics, like during that time.
Yeah.
And, when you know those truths, but then that these universal knowledges that whether it's telepathy or, what all of these truths are, then the rest of the world and your society is telling you no. Like, and not even willing to entertain like that there's even healing capable within these things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get why Leary was as pushy as he was, because it's almost one of those things that until you have walked across said bridge, he just knew that once those people would have came to these medicines, that they would not have had the same opinion that they did before.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, who knows? You know, maybe there's some alternate universe out there where Nixon actually ends up dosing with Leary. Who knows? But
I don't know, but it strikes me as you're saying that yeah, we had such loud voices for prohibition that to have an equally loud voice for liberation only makes sense. Guy, I'd love it if you could hop in, if you want to hop in on this conversation and maybe talk about your experience. This is something that is well worth chatting about. It's an aspect that most people, I feel like, are pretty unfamiliar with. There is the link in the restream chat. Might need to post it again. I don't know if it's visible for people in the LinkedIn or not. But would love to get some folks in here sharing their experience. I think that, what's up?
Oh, nothing. Kevin just said our true selves have long hair. Oh. Sacred knowledge with hair. I mean, that's...
So guys asking how to hop in. I don't know if you can not see it in the LinkedIn. Can you maybe go? I don't know why LinkedIn is not showing the thread out there. We're gonna get that link to you, Guy. We'd love to hear your about your trip there you just had. This is something that's going to be coming up. You can guarantee that as psychedelic therapy becomes more common, that we're going to have to figure out what to do with this clairvoyancy, the telepathy, all of the kind of psychic openings that we find. There's a friend of mine now who I worked with several times. He's a pilot, and you know, it's so crazy that pilots and law enforcement and many individuals who are in positions of authority cannot disclose if they're suffering from any form of mental illness. They can't disclose if they have had any kind of treatment. They could lose their license. And so I've worked with a number of pilots who had to keep their working with the mushrooms private. But this individual it took him a few times to get through a lot of his own kind of psychological hurdles. And when he did, he opened up an ability to distance heal and to perform kind of clairvoyant readings of people that he never knew he had. It was really amazing to see. We got Justice coming in here. What's up, Justice?
Hey, what's going on, guys? How you doing?
Great, man. Great to see you.
Great.
Yeah, what do you got for us?
The conversation. I was working earlier. I wanted to hop in, so yeah. No, I know you guys were talking about dosing earlier, and I thought that was pretty interesting. It's so weird. I kind of feel like there's never one, experience exactly like the last one, and yeah, I don't know if we really have any framework for that yet. I think that's something that's going to be new and exciting for, going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious how that's all going to play out. In the research, it's always been this kind of milligram per kilogram body weight ratio of dosing, and I think we're going to show how irrelevant that really is. I mean, surely they've seen that within the clinical trials, and I'm kind of curious why that isn't brought into the public conversation. Maybe it's just trying to, I can see a reason why the clinical trials would want to limit the perception of the variability of the experience, right? Because there's this portrayal of mushrooms that okay, if you take this dose of mushrooms, you're going to have this mystical experience, and then you're going to learn something new about yourself. And I think all of us sitting right here know that there are so many. Yeah, yeah. So can you share a little bit about some of the dosing that you've done, and maybe how maybe you've had like a 3 gram dose that was wildly different from another 3 gram dose, and what factors do you think are at play there?
So I think a big part of it is how your body chemistry is at the time, what time of day you take it, how well your body can break down the molecules and you can uptake it. Setting has a lot to do with it too. You can hang out in the house and feel just fine, and as soon as you go outside, everything just looks super crazy, and you feel extra small, and everything seems super big. Um, I've had experiences on less than 3 grams that were so profound. I mean, I've actually talked to, I don't know if it was a spirit or a being, but I've had conversations with things that I could see but almost not see. They kind of say, how you see the fractals or whatever, but I've seen fractals almost come up like if you were in water and you could see the liquid, just talking to you. And I've had experiences where I've taken, 2 grams and not felt the same. And I think it has a lot to do with the mushroom itself, what the potency is. I always recommend, I always try to fast before I eat mushrooms and have a vegetarian meal, but sometimes you don't get a chance to do that. Sometimes you just take them because you're trying to have a good time, and that's just how it is. I mean, I've had experiences on half ounces of mushrooms and literally been able to lay down on the carpet and watch the ceiling, but actually watch TV from the ceiling. Like somehow my peripheral was able to move the screen completely up. And I mean, it was like 100% clear. Like I was watching a movie. I could actually see the colors from, my visual of the screen kind of melt and then see a perfect picture on the ceiling. So, I mean, it's been a lot of wild experiences, and that one wasn't so spiritual, but it was definitely like one of those experiences where I'm trying to figure it out. Like, wow, how can I do that? My mind's able to.
How does that happen? Yeah. Yeah. Your mic is breaking up pretty bad. I don't know if your internet connection is.
How's it now? Is it better?
Is it better now? Still kind of. Keep talking.
Okay. I mean, I've also had experiences where, I've taken, 3 grams of, extremely strong mushrooms, and I felt like I felt like I kept seeing Mandela, my own consciousness moving into a bigger back into a smaller consciousness, and it just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. And then, after I got out of that observation, after I got out of it, my body actually swollen, felt stiff, almost like I was starting to rigor mortis or something, because I think my spirit actually left my body for a while.
I've seen things swell up. Yeah, you're
different every single time.
It 100% is. Yeah, it's breaking up pretty bad though. It's breaking up pretty bad on us. But I what you're saying, like I gotta kind of link this here, because I've actually noticed it with my rings in particular, hands swelling up, and like I don't know how people are going to understand this and how it's going to come across, but one of the things that I have really come to interpret the mushroom experience as, and it explains, if you can get into some of the kind of the more esoteric Eastern texts, it explains the clairvoyance, the out of body stuff. bilocation. I mean, I can't even tell you some of the weird shit that I've experienced. But what it ultimately comes down to is an increased level of prana or chi energy, of life force. And I really and truly believe that that's one of the main things that the mushrooms do, is increase our receptivity, not just to information and, new experience, but a receptivity to this intake of vital energy. So it's a little bit out there maybe, but I'm going to see if we can get some of these other folks hopping in, Justice, just because your mic's chopping up pretty bad. I hate to do it, but it's really tough. I don't know if you can get if you get a better connection and you want to hop in, I'd love to have you here.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The signal's messed up for me too.
All right. Love having you, man. Thanks for coming in. Let's see if Guy's here with us now. Guy.
Greetings.
Hello, sir. Good to see you, my friend.
Hello, Eric. Good to see you too.
Yeah, tell us about this experience you're alluding to.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So I've been working with mushrooms for a while, and I've started to work with other people as well who are, seeking answers, dealing with trauma, all those good things. And this one guy who's been helping me out with my cabin and doing some remodeling, we've been working together for about 6 months, and had a few journeys together. And this last journey on the weekend, my intention was just kind of generally about healing and kind of understanding my role in healing. And his intention was about intimacy and about understanding his inability to be intimate. And kind of shying away from that and kind of being very guarded. And, get into the experience. We didn't do a huge dose. It's like 2.5 grams of penis envy, but they don't like being called that. They like being called gentle truth. So anyways, they're really good, and it wasn't a huge dose, but in my experience, I started like experiencing all this this kind of energy around sexual abuse and trauma around child sexual abuse. And I started exploring my own kind of history and trying to dig it out and go like, was I abused? I was trying to understand this. And then I started in my consciousness was thinking about that it was generational trauma because my mom was sexually abused. And I've done a lot of work on intergenerational trauma and really kind of digging in and kind of getting stuff out like that that's kind of buried in my, epigenetically. Mm-hmm. And then so we come out of this experience and we start talking after, a few hours, and he starts telling me about his journey, and it's like exactly the same as mine. Mm-hmm. And right away I start talking to him about intergenerational trauma. And he had told me about his mother's experience and being abused by her father and stuff, and all her sisters and everything. It was horrible. Mm. And that was it. Like right away, he's like, oh my God, that was it. He goes, I felt like I was being choked through the whole experience. And it was like somebody was holding me down and choking me. And in my experience, I was having trouble breathing. And it was all about my breathing and about like not being able to breathe. And it was just the weirdest thing. So I'm really glad you said, oh yeah, I've had it before. I figured you would, but it's the first time I've ever experienced this kind of like, leapfrogging into another consciousness. And it was like, early on in the experience, I was having these visions, and, in my conscious mind, I was like, I'm in his journey. Like, this is not like this is.
So you were able to know that to at least on some level understand that in the midst of it.
early on. And then when it got really dark and it got into like the generational trauma and stuff, I thought it was my stuff that I was dealing with. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't, although it could have been, because, like most people, there's some kind of horrible abuse down the generational chain, right? Pretty much every family. And, but I'm almost certain, because just the experience he had, the things he went through, the things I were going through, the messages we were getting from the mushrooms. And it was just all just exactly the same. It was so weird.
Well, so, one thing I would say is that, we are all one, that it was your journey and it was his journey, and that this is the human experience, and that it's not a metaphor. We are actually one. And that has been an entry point that I have used and still do use, in trying to be a support for people. I never go in seeking information on anyone. I never, it's not my place. I'm not, if there is something that is revealed to me, then I understand that as them on some level revealing that in order to kind of share the load, if you will. And I feel like it is a powerful gift that the mushrooms give to us to help be there with and for each other in that way. And that it is something that we can develop. The first time I experienced something like this, I don't know, it was pretty early on in my big dose stuff. And there was a guy that I had been friends with for years, and we went and did a big dose together. And as it was coming on, my groin was just on fire. And I was like, what the fuck is this? I was just doubled over in pain, and I didn't know what the hell. It just kind of came out of nowhere. And as I'm sitting there just trying to figure out what's going on, he goes to piss in the bushes there next to me, and he's like, oh man, I've got this UTI. It's just killing me. And I knew without knowing that, oh fuck, I'm feeling him, and then that very slowly, very, very slowly and over time has begun to open into greater depths of what that means and greater ways in which I can be a support for other people in that space. So, I would suggest to you that having that happen, and, I know a very little bit about you, but, just the kind of the authenticity and the sincerity and the compassion and the way that you show up, listening to people and holding space for people, it's no surprise to me that you would have that opening occur. And so going into this again, I find it very interesting to begin to try and experience and understand better how many thoughts that we're having on a daily basis are actually our thoughts. How much of what we're experiencing and what we're interpreting as our thought or our experience is actually us picking up on other people. I mean, my wife and I, it's to the point now that it's kind of just we make jokes about it. She will say what I'm thinking, or I will say what she's thinking. And, when we get into these, it's just all field transference.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much we don't know. Right. But I appreciate your comments and thank you. I liked your earlier comment when you said that, when you take the sacrament with other people, your intention is kind of like, how can I be a vessel for healing, just to kind of in a general sense. And that was kind of like my intention the other night. Because there wasn't really something specific that I wanted to work on, but I wanted to support him. And normally when I work with people with mushrooms, I stay lucid and, I don't take anything. I just make sure they're safe. I kind of cater to them and make sure that they're, sometimes people take mushrooms, they turn into big giant babies, right?
So let's
really
talk
cute.
about this.
It's really cute, but it's a lot of work.
Yes, it is. Yes, it can be. Beautiful work, beautiful work. But let's talk about this. So first of all, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear a little bit about what your history working with psilocybin has been.
Yeah. So, my journey, I mean, early on in my, teens, early 20s, experimented with a lot of psychedelics, LSD, mushrooms, MDMA. And then, take a long hiatus, and, there was a lot of burying of trauma that I didn't really know about until I started meditating just a few years ago. I got really into meditation, and then I, through meditation, was brought to Mother Ayahuasca, and I did my first ayahuasca ceremonies. I did 2, and then I did another 2 or 3 months later. And then that led me into the mushroom space, and got into it with my sister, who started growing them and cultivating them. And then, I started doing that, and I really started working with them and really understanding the intentional use of psychedelics and the real kind of value of, trying to understand ourselves through plant and fungi consciousness. And then with that, just really adopted, for lack of a better term, a real shamanic worldview of kind of panpsychism, and that everything has consciousness, and that, to your point, we're all part of the same universe. We're all the universe. We're all God. And just understanding with that. But then, that kind of led me to service, and understanding that I have had a very gifted life, nothing extraordinary, no major wealth or anything like that, but just always lucky, and so I realized I needed to start giving back. It was time. I'm getting old and I'm going to die soon, so I got to do something in this life. So I started doing mushrooms. I started exploring, working with other people with them, and kind of just doing a lot of educating myself, reading a lot of books, listening to a lot of podcasts, doing a lot of mushrooms, but doing them in a really sacred context. And it really kind of, is leading me down that road. I moved from Seattle a few months ago. I bought this little cabin up in the woods on the Skagit River. I'm building a healing retreat up here, and I've had a few people up, and it's just been really successful so far. Everybody's getting a lot out of it. I do a lot to prepare people. Like I mentioned, I pretty much stay lucid and trip sit for them. And then I work with them for a few weeks on integration afterwards, just to make sure that they're meditating, they're journaling, they're being mindful, they're on their stuff. And because obviously, you can take the medicine and it's just the hardware upgrade. If you don't upgrade the software with intentional actions, it's not going to do any good. You're just going to go back to your old ways. So that's kind of my journey to date.
Excellent. So can you talk about what your experiences have been in facilitating with a dose and not with a dose? I'm assuming this is just once that you've done that, but I'd love, even if you could just compare that experience to others.
Yeah. I mean, without a dose, I'm just basically babysitting. I'm just making sure that folks are okay. I've had small groups up here, and they were all fairly new to psychedelics. So, there was a couple times they were like, all wide-eyed, I need some help, and I'm like, so just kind of tuck them back into bed and make sure they're okay. But I find that, with the dosing, I definitely enter a really strange state of consciousness. For lack of a better term, I do go into a trance. Sometimes there's languages that are coming and going that I don't understand, really weird voices, channeling weird stuff. I honestly don't understand it. I'm trying to figure it out. But I know that for myself, it's been extremely effective in digging up like really old trauma, like stuff that I had, my dad's death of over 40 years that I had never dealt with. And all of a sudden, boom, out it comes, like he had just died. It was, man, just so amazing. So amazing.
Wow.
So, and with my friend that I mentioned who's here the other night, he's a new person. He came to me, he was severely depressed. He was, on all kinds of SSRIs and, in therapy and just really not doing too well. And, started getting him meditating and then working with the mushrooms in an intentional way and really understanding that, but also working with the ongoing mindfulness, which I think is super valuable. Just people like checking themselves constantly. Well, why am I doing this? Why am I reacting this way? Like, instead of just reacting, that little space between stimulus and response. It's like the magic present moment where you're able to kind of tap into your divinity and do the right thing, So it's been really effective. And
it's amazing. Yeah,
it's slowly building. I'm getting a few other people who are interested. I haven't started advertising it or anything. Of course, it's underground because of the legality of it, but Washington State's coming around. And, at the end of the day, my thing is a lot of people need this medicine. There's a lot of people who are lined up who can't even get in to see a therapist because there's such a shortage of therapists. Yeah. And, by the time the clinical therapeutic model comes around and gets legal and rolls out, how many people are going to die of suicide? So my thing is, hey, if someone comes, if the feds want to come in and raid me and take my mushrooms, I'll be pissed as hell, but it's well worth it if I can help some people.
No, I totally agree. And it does seem like we are in a very different environment than even 3 to 5 years ago. There's so much experience and compounding research illustrating the safety and efficacy of these plants, these sacraments. But what I really would love to get to, if at all possible, and again, I feel like you're just starting to tiptoe in there, but when, as a trip sitter or a space holder or facilitator for your friend while on the dosing, do you, after that experience, do you feel like is that something you would like to do again, or do you feel okay? And why so? What do you feel like is what's better, or what benefit comes out of that maybe doesn't come out of you not communing as well?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm trip sitting, basically I'm just sitting around reading a book, I think being in the same consciousness, like I really felt like I was in his experience. And the benefit of that was, it's not like I was affecting it or altering it, but when we came out of it and we talked about it, I knew exactly what was going on. Like I knew exactly when I brought it up, generational trauma, he's like, oh my God, that's it. That's it. I would have never thought of it. I'm like, well, I mean, it's his mom, and that's really fresh generational trauma. And I'm like, that's clearly going to have an effect over trust and intimacy and all those things. And that's going to be passed on to you, and you're going to be guarded because of that. And, kind of putting 2 to 2 together, it was just way easier to do that, whereas when I trip sit and we do a group circle afterwards and we, talk about stuff, there's a little more kind of deciphering and kind of, Q&A and kind of digging in to help people kind of figure stuff out. Whereas this, it was just like, I knew exactly right away. I was just like, yep, this is it. Because I was there, I was experiencing it.
Yes. And this is what I want therapists, and there are maybe therapists right now listening to this, but there are, more clinical minded people that are engaging with these, thankfully so. But what you're talking about here is a value add that isn't, to my knowledge, isn't being talked about within the clinical therapeutic setting. It's, this kind of sterile 2 trip sitters, 1 person who's dosing. Right. Neither of the trip sitters are taking any of the sacrament or the medicine, whatever, however you want to call it. And it is very much just this kind of, I'm there and I'll show up in the way that I can, but to be able to connect with on that intuitive, empathic sense, it takes a rare individual to be able to go there without the medicine itself.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's why I said, like, without, you asked me if I would prefer that. Without a doubt, yes. It's a matter of getting people who are comfortable with that. So, for me, it would be like, is someone experienced with mushrooms and or psychedelics? Are they comfortable with it? Because I want to explore this more. I want to see if it's repeatable. I want to see if it's something that is, so I'm super curious about it.
Not only is it repeatable, and these are the conversations I'm so grateful to have. It's, this is not something that I get to talk about a lot, really. As we develop a working community where we're having these experiences more regularly together, then yes, it's more capable. And what I would love to share with you and just kind of maybe encourage you to keep your eyes peeled for what have experienced over time in working with either, if you want to, the lines get a little blurry when you're supporting people who in this space, because they become, it's not just your client. It's not just some person off the street. You develop such a deep connection to the people who you're working with. And in doing that over years, you develop really deep friendships, and so it's, at least in my experience, it's a little bit different than kind of that, therapist client relationship. But what eventually comes out of this is, it's really difficult to say, but if you can imagine groups of people who, like you said, have that trust and confidence in each other to know that, all right, we can all dive into this. And when we do, we're not just doing it for us right here, like myself. We're not just doing it, or I'm not just doing it for this little group right here. We are all doing this for the collective. We are all processing information for the collective. And to have a group of people who can be more and more cognizant of that and trustworthy and go into that, just dive in together, I think we can expedite some massive healing on this planet.
Amen, brother. I could not agree more.
I look forward to the day when you and I get to eat some mushies together, my friend. I think that would be some good times.
Yes, please. I'm gonna have to come down to Louisville for a visit.
Man, I gotta get up to PNW, man. I need to hunt some of those Azzies.
You are welcome. You're welcome to come up anytime. There's my backyard. I don't know if you can see it.
Okay, shit. Is that the Sound, or is that a creek?
That's the Skagit River.
Oh man, nice. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's like it's a little slice of nature, I started doing plant and fungi medicine, and then they were like, you need to be in nature. You need to be in nature. So after living in a city for 40 years almost, off I went. I'm living in the middle of nowhere now, and like a fish out of water, learning how to use chainsaws and things like that.
Nice. Yeah.
Be a reality show or something.
Yeah, be careful with those chainsaws, man. Be careful. I had some close ones out there on my farm. Well, I did the same thing. I went from the city out to 87 acres in the middle of fucking Amish country. Started heating with wood and just farming, and it was a major shock to the system. But I'm feeling the mushrooms pulling us to another rural property. We're gonna end up with a nice country property for sanctuary and be doing some retreats and stuff out there. I can feel it.
Well, if you're looking for a Washington State, branch, or I don't know what you would call it, I volunteer.
Oh, don't worry. You're already on the good list, buddy. We're gonna have that conversation.
Beautiful. Thank
Love
you, brother.
I think so, man. Thanks so much for being part of our community.
All right, my pleasure.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I saw some good comments coming in there. Jordan Wilder. Yes, this is an amazing man here. We've got to know him a little bit through Sanctuary, and really happy to be having him here. So I bet there's Azzies all over that yard. I wouldn't be surprised there. I wouldn't be surprised. Let's see what else Justice is saying. I agree. I noticed that when I'm taking mushrooms more frequently, I'm able to practically read my partner's mind and vice versa. Yeah, it's kind of uncanny, but it does seem to be true. And that aspect again is something that we're going to get to explore as time goes on. Tristan, what do you think about all that? I can't hear you. There you go.
I was muted. Dang. No, like kind of just that last little piece there, what Guy was saying, the generational of this, you know, it was brought to us by more than just one life, one person, within that past history of this collective, and it's going to have to be healed by more than one person, and it will take like a collective in that same sense. And so again, it's things like the work of Sanctuary, people like Guy. I mean, that's a really cool seeing from previous to now. Like, it's beautiful.
Man, it has been so incredible, Sanctuary, having kind of gotten to know people from a distance and then get more close. We got Steven in here. Steven him and his wife are moving to Louisville, coming to know them over the years and get now here with Sanctuary closer, and then they've been coming to town. And I don't know, I just kind of like, the human mind is always looking for the things that are wrong in the environment. I feel like that's just part of what we do. We're always trying to fix a problem, look for a problem. But more and more, I've been really trying to just continue focusing on the blessings. And it is having worked in Jamaica for 7 years and seeing how that developed over 7 years. And then now seeing where we are here in the States over just a year. We're May 7th is our 1 year Zoom service. And the community is already so much stronger. The people like Guy, like Derek and Emma, like Susan, like Sally. There's all kinds of names that come to my mind that are
Kevin.
like Kevin. Well, Kevin's just been there for how long? Kevin's in my DMs daily for like 6 years now. He's family. But yeah, but Kevin as well. That's something that showed up in my back door. Oh yeah, you had me that day, buddy. You had me. But just seeing this community build, it seems from the inside, I'm like, oh, this is moving slowly. But like when I take a step back and see what it's been like over the years, this shit is like, it's happening so fast. And there's already, going to be a point where all these little tendrils that are out there, like the mycelium does, are just going to consolidate. And we're going to find ourselves with a network of people all across this country, all across this world, I believe, that like more than just like normalizing mushrooms, bringing back our ancient practice, our ancient birthright. This is who we are. Go look on the fucking cave paintings in Spain 12,000 years ago or in Northern Africa, and there are psychedelic mushrooms. There are human figures surrounded by mushrooms. This is our birthright. And so as other organizations, but I really think the churches, the spiritual organizations that approach psilocybin in this communal way, like Guy's talking about, in this very sacred way, in this manner that's open to things like collective consciousness and telepathy and bilocation or whatever, all the weird stuff that we pretend like doesn't happen. but that we know in our heart, in our being, our limitlessness. We are the time machines. There is no time. We are pure vibration. And so as we get deeper and deeper knowledge of what that really means, and that we can really apply that. You know, if you got a hammer and you're just like, you got to figure out how to use the hammer, or you got somebody that can show you how to use the hammer, you can get a hell of a lot more done with someone showing you how to use the hammer. So as we continue to come back into these practices that helped us build the pyramids, that helped us probably travel to the stars long before now, that helped us become who we are today, then like as we regain that knowledge and we can pass that on, like imagine what 3 generations are going to look like down the road if we can, not if we can, if we demand and uphold our right to this practice. Because that's what's fucked up. This whole thing was taken away from us. I'm on a rant, and I'm serious. I don't know if I'm picking up on your shrooms or about what, but seriously, no fucking plant can ever be illegal again. Ever. No plant can ever be illegal again. That shit has got to be done. Period. So anyway.
No, I mean, I think that's absolutely beautiful. And you know, if we get to 3 generations, like, can you imagine how pissed off like the dead Iroquois League's gonna be? They're like, you got us by 4.
It's gonna be fascinating to watch it all unfold. I'm just so grateful. And again, like I said, when I look around and see what is actually surrounding me, then I welcome more and more of it.
No, this is the last thing, little rant. Like you can't, like, say that they tried to eliminate spores. Like I would just love it. Like the government creates like some type of vacuum system. They're sucking out all the spores out of the air, you know, trying to eliminate psilocybin mushrooms somehow. All right, like maybe that's just in one country. And then like there's literally spiders that are crossing the oceans on their little webs, catching the wind. I mean, not only are spores doing this, but then it's like spores are on these things. Like, it's just absolutely crazy. It's like life will. Like, there's no. I think you were able to stop it in the past because of the Tim Leary, because of the technology. Same thing that happened within the brutalities of governments. But now that there's a lens and there's a voice and there's a global consciousness and collective, people are heard. And so I don't think you can silence what is anymore.
That's the hope. You know, I do think that we always have to stay on guard because ideology is so what's the word I want to use? It's just such a slippery slope. You know, we very easily kind of, especially when convenience is a factor, we very easily allow little things to kind of, just like Guy said, if you don't stay meditating, if you don't do the work and you don't stay mindful and aware, then you're going to fall back into the same loops. And if we're not mindful and aware, we could easily end up in the world of slavery again. That could easily happen if we don't stay mindful. And that's why, you know, just like the drug war, look at that. Look at how many fucking millions and millions of people were contained by just a handful of people with some powerful threats. Same thing with slavery. And, you know, it's easily argued that the drug war is an extension of American slavery. A handful of people who had such a pervasive ideology fueled by dogmatic religion that convinced an incredible army of humans. I mean, look what the African race, I mean, not race, there's a human race, but look what the African culture, people, vibrancy have brought into this world, and the just the pure size of first generation Africans compared to slave owners. It was purely ideology that allowed them to control an unstoppable force. It's an unstoppable force, but it was paused because of, and so, I think that it is really important that once we gain a right back like this, because you don't very often get rights back, once they're gone, they're gone. And this is a rare thing. And science, thank God for science that has helped to prove, validate the medical benefits of cannabis. Duh. Like that's the one right there that we as the most educated, wealthiest nation on earth, like that we allowed millions of people to be imprisoned, to be put in a fucking cage because of this plant that we can very easily prove has historical, spiritual, medicinal use. At worst is non-toxic, right? And we allowed our family members to be put in fucking cages. My family lost thousands of acres. Several of my family went into cages for decades. And there's so many more. And it was us. I don't give a shit. I used to get so infuriated. My uncles are in prison, and my mom was like, they shouldn't have grown those plants. And it's like, no, we shouldn't have bowed and allowed agricultural artists to be imprisoned. It is artistry.
I just love it.
Look at the weed now. Tell me those are art scientists behind that shit. Slow down, guys. Slow down. It ain't got to be so powerful. Still, it's like moon rocks rolling, Keith and shit.
They went Banksy on it.
And that's what we get, right? That's what we get when we have this prohibition, when we have this, a hard no, you never do this. Well, then when the gates do open, then we just don't even know how to manage ourselves. And hopefully psilocybin and psychedelics don't go that way again, because it could be taken away. You know what China did? This is the funniest story that I think is it's very relevant to the psychedelic renaissance, because now we're all like, oh, we're getting psychedelics back, yay, right? Here's what China did with Qigong. Okay, mushrooms taught me that Qigong is the most powerful self-healing practice. Why I'm not doing that 6 hours a day is the real question. But in the 80s, the cost of healthcare, the cost of taking care of the sick in China was getting so high that they set out on a campaign to encourage the population to practice Qigong daily, right? To harness their energy vessel, to clean it out, all the physical moves behind it. It's all energy. And so for about 20 or 30 years, Qigong became a persistent practice among common Chinese, and it drastically improved health. But what it also started to lead to was the very things that we're talking about: clairvoyancy, foresight, distance healing, psychic and telepathic abilities. And again, there's a ton of crossover here, and the mushrooms showed me all this, and it all kind of, you see that it's just this kind of backfeeding loop into itself of chi, of life enhancement, that's where all wisdom, that's where all longevity, that's where all of this comes from, beauty, everything. It's all just this vital energy that is singing through all matter. And so the people were practicing Qigong and were becoming powerful. They were realizing they were gaining back their power. And what happened then? they outlawed Qigong. They fucking outlawed Qigong. It was outlawed, and then they brought it back in to improve people's health, and then people got too powerful, and they outlawed it again. And those billions of Chinese let it happen. They let it happen. And, you know, I mean, we're all, whatever, like we can get into a whole big conversation about like when we push back against the government and what that means. Because
no, I mean, I guess the only thing for me is that, you know, this is the one thing that I want to slip in on the drug war is just that, you know, I was talking with my dad the other day, and like we were talking about the overdoses, and we were talking about that documentary that was on Hulu, Dope Stick, and I was like, you know, I couldn't finish it. I could not finish it because I'm so frustrated with all of the money from the opioid epidemic, from the lawsuits of that, and not really seeing it being put to use, one, even in the regions which were affected the deepest. But secondly, not in a healthy way. And, you know, it's like we're handing out Narcan like crazy, which is after the fact. What are we doing to prevent before the fact? What are we doing to prevent people who are consciously unaware of what's even going on? And, you know, this thing came up in the conversation, and I just said, like, you know, how many people are truly, we say that it's like an overdose death, but it's a contamination death. It's not an overdose death because they're not ingesting what they think that they're even ingesting. It's no different than the people who, there was like some military students that were on spring break in Florida who thought that they were getting cocaine, and it was laced with fentanyl. Like, if they would have all passed away, it would have been like overdose death. But then they had no clue what they were even putting into their body. And I think that that's the part for me that hurts the most of this epidemic is like
that's worth looking at, you know. The drug laws are supposedly ostensibly put in place to maintain public safety, right? But it's actually those drug laws that cause more harm because people don't have knowledgeable access to whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, and those same laws that make it to where like things as simple as like health departments having in Canada, like there's places that you can actually like, that people can take these things and have them tested. In Oregon, you're starting to see this. In California, so I mean, we're getting there. But
yeah, well, you know, where my head goes back is, again, guy said it, generational trauma. Till we fix this generational shit, till we quit passing down trauma, we're gonna keep creating criminals and creating poverty, and you know, and so like same thing you're saying, like where's the prevention? Where do we come in ahead of things? And you know, that's something that as Sanctuary, as we talk about programs and ways that we interact with the community, for many years, I have, even back when I was teaching, I thought, man, how cool would it be to create an actual drug education program where you went into schools and you said, here's MDMA, here's LSD, here's cannabis, here's cocaine, here's heroin, here's all these things that you can do, and then here's what they're going to do to you. And humans are smart. People are smart. We will make intelligent choices if we're given, you know, like a healthy environment, and you know, we know where our meal's coming from, and we know that we have emotional support, you know, and fulfill our basic needs. And then, man, watch out. So here's to humanity. I hope we pull this thing off, y'all. We got a lot of good shit
Regeneration.
going. I mean, we got the mushrooms. First of all, we got them to help us, and we got the aliens. Y'all see that shit? Hey, we didn't talk about this. Fucking Pentagon is saying the whole more alien off-world stuff being revealed. This is huge, you guys. Hey, and mushrooms have we can go there. What's it say? Can you see that? Come trip with us, right? You can trip with us. Terrence was onto something. Terrence said that the mushrooms, he thought that it was possible anyway, that the mushrooms were an intergalactic communication device. And if you were to be an intelligent being that was trying to develop a communication device that could be disseminated throughout through galaxies, what better than the spores that you so correctly pointed out, Tristan, ride on the wings of the wind.
Right on the asteroids.
And on asteroids and can survive. I mean, evolution doesn't give you something to not use it. Like whatever you get it to use. Mushrooms, they can survive the vacuum and radiation of space. Why is that? I don't know. Ask them. Love y'all. Thanks so much for being a part of On Psilocybin. Hopefully you felt like you got a little dose to do you good. So much love, and until next time. Thank you, Tristan.
Bye.